Our next speaker will be Salah Khawaja. He is the Managing Director of Automation and Global Risk at Bank of America. Salah has spent 20 years on Wall Street focused on shepherding change through business transformation in multiple banking verticals. Initially as a management consultant with Deloitte, subsequently at JP Morgan before joining Bank of America. He currently leads global risk automation strategy using data and machine learning for enterprise independent testing. His team has built an automation platform covering anomaly detection, dashboarding, workflow, notifications, and search. Like Amazon built a machine to enable e-commerce, which subsequently they commercialized through the cloud, he hopes the automation platform he has built can be leveraged more broadly.
To talk how you can use all your data science and basically convince the business users to kind of go on that journey. And since I work for a big corporation, I've got the usual caveat that the remarks I'm about to make are of a personal nature and don't reflect that of my employer, Bank of America. So let me start with the haiku. Shui started one yesterday. I thought I'd kind of follow the same path. And is it not up? Thank you. So I'm going to start with the haiku. I write, erase, and rewrite. Erase again, and then a poppy blooms. And for sure, the AI poppy is blooming to the tune of a $7 trillion opportunity ahead of us. To really understand that opportunity, we have to understand some history, where we are today, and then take advantage of this opportunity. So if you frame a simple question, do we live in the worst of times? And if you listen to the talking heads on TV, regardless of what spectrum you're on, it feels it's really, really bad. Even the mood of fish get a breaking news alert, right? But if you flip that question and you basically ask, do you live in the best of times? One stat after another to how the human quality of life has dramatically improved over the last 100 years. And not just by a few percent points. In many, many cases, it's dozens of percent points. You think about mortality, you think about poverty rates, life expectancy, the human quality of life has vastly improved. And it's as a result of a series of mostly sequential revolutions. It started with the printing press in the 1400s that brought the cost of book publishing down. And we went from an oral culture to a literate culture. And that sparked the European Renaissance. And then the Industrial Revolution, where mills mechanized the production of textiles, so the cost of clothes came down. Then came the steam engine. The cost of transportation came down. Then electricity and engineering. And this is where basically, from an overall perspective, we had massive roads that were built, steamships, et cetera. And that brought the cost of trade down. And then with the automobiles and industrialization, you had mass production. And that ushered the modern era of massive consumer consumption. And then we had computers and telecom. And what did computers do? They brought the cost of arithmetic down. So you didn't need a team of mathematicians to calculate where a cannonball would fall. A computer would do that. So keep that in mind when we talk about AI. AI is bringing the cost of something down. What is that something? And I'll connect the dots in a bit. So if you think about the much wanted club of becoming a $1 billion startup, a unicorn, these were some of the unicorns in the earlier part of the decade. And then you'll notice that the pace of those billion-dollar companies has vastly increased. And over 200 have been created in the last 5 years. And this is what Mark Anderson has labeled the software eating the world. So even a company like Goldman and their CEO talks about how Goldman is a tech company. Everybody wants to become a software company. So it's obvious that the change that is coming at us is massive, and it's coming fast. It's no longer sequential, right? We all understand software and AI, but there's a bunch of other revolutions that are happening concurrently. So as a result, if you think about where we are today, there are multiple themes that emerge. And the first and most interesting one is, if it's going to get 10 times cheaper, it's going to get adopted. It's clear. Here's a simple example. What you see here in that big box is a 5 megabyte hard drive. Today, in our cameras, we have this. The cost came down. This is a cell phone from the 90s. This is what most of us are carrying around today. Again, the cost came down like this. Another great example is LiDAR, what enables the driverless aspect of a driverless car. When it was initially produced, it cost $75,000. So if you're at a car company and you go to the CFO and you say, hey, listen, I want to make this driverless, a car that we sell for $30,000, I'm going to tag on $75,000, and we're going to sell it for $105,000, CFO would laugh you out of the room. But that would be kind of the stupidest decision that could be made. Because right now, the cost of a LiDAR is in the low thousands, and it's headed down to 100. So what might be expensive today is not going to be expensive tomorrow, and that's something that you have to think about in terms of the journeys that you're on. Another interesting thing is, until about a couple of decades ago, we only had one identity, a physical one. With the internet, we've developed a second identity. And that's a massive change if you think about the thousands of years of human history and how we have to now grapple with an alter ego, if you will. And you think about the crisis from Facebook and Google, et cetera, right now with the privacy, that's as a result of all of this. And what's interesting is, for most of human history, communication happened at the pace of the horse. So as a result, you would have a singular person on top, whether it would be a king, an emperor, a general, or a pope, right? With the internet, communication happens so much faster. So basically, the power structures have inverted. And we talked a lot over the last 2 days about democratizing AI. You could have smart, business-savvy people, not data scientists, that could actually be using H2O's product and building data models. The interesting thing is that problem spaces shift from, hey, should I take this picture, to, oh my God, I have so many pictures, and it becomes a filtering problem. So as you implement your innovations and your strategies, think about how the shift's going to happen from what the problem was to what the new problem's going to be. And then you're going to need another solution for that. So now let's kind of connect the dots with automation. If you think about what most manual knowledge workers do, they focus on manual processing and less on the other value-added aspect of things. So with automation, you're going to replace the manual processing side to things. And it could be simple business rules, or it could be advanced AI. And what this allows is for people to free up to move up the value chain, from just monitoring and surveillance to analytics and focusing on the strategy side to things. So if you think about what an average knowledge worker in a bank does, whether it's an analyst in CFO or an equities back office analyst, they get information, they analyze it, and then they reach a conclusion. So keep thinking about those three things: getting information, analyzing it, and reaching a conclusion. Most knowledge workers follow that path. We've built a system that replaces the first aspect, which is getting the information from databases. Then we've built a system that replaces the logic or the analysis. What the human being was doing, a computer can do. Business rules or AI. And then you just display the conclusion on a dashboard, and you're good to go. And that's your automation system. And what we've done is we've done it for an area called testing. For those that are familiar with the a scandal that one of our competitors faced where they're opening up fake accounts, and they got hit by $1 billion fine. If they had a robust testing program in place, they would know that accounts are being opened and they're not being funded, something's going on. So the idea would be to isolate that problem to one branch or one city before it became systemic. So the idea basically is you look at anomalies. The example that we use is a branch in Miami is opening up more accounts than it typically does. We get an anomaly, and we go track it. Oh, you know what? They're running a sales promotion. All good. Oh, no, wait. There's something more going on here. Let's go probe this. So again, if you go back to that pyramid, the manual aspect of things, the analyzing the data, the machine's doing most of it. And it's guiding the human to do the more value-added side to things. And we don't think about automation in the form of singularity, that the automation system that we've built is going to replace humans completely. There are many other components to this. And it starts with dashboards. The anomaly example is a great one. And you basically build customized dashboards that people can easily understand. You don't need to get out a decoder ring to understand what the dashboard's saying. Think about your favorite app on your phone. Did you need to read a manual to use it? No. It's the same way, right? Dashboards are easy to get. If the CFO of my organization wants to log into our system, he or she can understand it, versus someone lower in the organization. The next aspect is workflow. The simplest way to understand this is that just use the analogy of FedEx. You know exactly where your package is. So every single business is managing their own packages. In our case, it's tests. So you know where the workflow is, where things are in the process. There are thousands of things being tracked, so you want to understand that. In the Miami example, once that anomaly happens and that threshold is breached, an alert is generated. A notification is sent. Just like your social media, your Twitter, your Facebook, when you open it up, you can see the little notification icon that says, hey, you know what? 4 notifications. Go check them out. We think of it the same way. When the Knowledge Worker 2.0 walks into the office, they actually have a queue. And they have these notifications and alerts that guide them to action. And the last aspect that we've built in is basically a cognitive NLP-based search capability, where you don't even have to do anything other than just type something, very much like Google. And all the results basically come out. And so this combined enables us to have a full automation platform. And so very much like in the world of driverless cars, the job of an Uber driver is going to shift from behind a wheel to behind a computer screen monitoring a fleet of cars. The same vision applies here, that we have a control room, and we are monitoring everything. We're monitoring the data. We're monitoring the anomalies. And so we have people that are sitting and looking at all of this. And had an interesting discussion earlier about how sometimes you don't want to do things reactively. You want to do things in line. So those that are familiar with Bank of America's Erica platform, which is our chatbot. So customers are chatting with Erica right now. Can we put controls into that process so that we know if something goes wrong? And we can fix it in a real time, not real time, but near real time basis. So if some of the errors happen, they happen, isolate that to the day, to the week, and not let it progress further. So if you think about the series of revolutions I talked about, they were all bringing the cost of something down. And if you use that same frame and you think about AI is bringing the cost of something down, what is that something? It's basically prediction. Very much like when you go to the doctor is trying to predict what ails you. That's what AI is doing. And if you put it in those terms, the businesses will get it. So for Bank of America, we're trying to predict which trader is trading on insider information. We're trying to predict which financial advisor is trading too much based on the customer's profile. And that's how we're using AI as part of this broader automation system to basically make those predictions. We have a platform of surveillances where we monitor 150,000 alerts in an FX area. Now we have humans that actually look at those alerts versus a model that's actually predicting the false positives, the false negatives, the whole confusion matrix. So if you kind of put all of this together, kind of leading up to the $7 trillion opportunity, we've got literally thousands of applications across the different business units. And so data is obviously the key challenge, right? Connecting to the data. And this is something that we're thinking about just in a very recent way. And it's actually interesting that Matrix 4 is coming out because it's making me think about it in those terms. That we are connecting all of these applications through this automation system. Applications that were historically not connected. So then like the last day and a half, we spent so much data. If we make these connections happen, can I draw insights that I wasn't able to draw before? So on one side, I've got customer complaints. On another side, I've got my legal issues. I've got this database, I've got that database, and I got that database. If I bring all of that data together, can I then say, hey, listen, in Miami, we're seeing some issues. In a specific product line, let's say our Platinum card service, we're seeing some issues. Go probe that. And if you connect all these applications, very much like the Matrix, we can start drawing those insights in ways that just humanly is not possible. OK, so the $7 trillion number. So McKinsey has this study that talks to how there are about 300 million knowledge workers worldwide. At least 30% of what they do is manual and redundant and repetitive. So if you add all of that up, that's how you get the $7 trillion. If we're able to capitalize on this, we, Bank of America, you all, broadly the world, that's the opportunity at stake. That's the value that can be generated in terms of freeing people up from doing that mundane work to the more insightful, value-added work. So let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges we face. And it really begins with how it's an imagination problem. I don't know how many of you, when you had that Nokia phone 15 years ago, could imagine that, hey, I'm going to get this phone out, I'm going to hit a button, and there's going to be a car waiting outside for me. Right? So somebody imagined that. In many ways, all the data scientists here, you guys are trying to imagine in your unique ways the insights and a target state. So how do you translate that into business value? Somebody imagined Erica for us, and now instead of customers dialing an 800 number, then hitting this number, hitting an account number, blah, 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 you just chat with a chatbot. So it's just thinking about how business value can be driven from an imagination perspective. The second challenge is that the nervous system attacks when you innovate. And a great example is Match.com. The CEO of Match.com in New York cleared out one floor, put a brand new team in there, and basically said, I want you to kill Match.com. That was that team's objective. He was employing his people to basically kill his business. And you know what they created? They created Tinder. And when Match.com went public, 60% of their market cap was based on Tinder. So if you as data scientists, if you're in your silo and there are people that are around you, you are trying to change, you're trying to innovate. The nervous system is not going to let you because there are people who are embedded in the old way, they're resistant to change, and you are trying to tackle that. So the trick here is something called parallelism, right? Where you basically set this up separately. Another way to look at it is, how are you going to be different at minimum 10%? What are you doing individually this year that is 10% different than last year? What is your organization doing 10% different this year than last year? Are you building 10% new models? And then your overall organization, are you generating revenue that is 10% from different products and services? The really innovative organizations are driving 30% revenue from new products and services. So if competition comes, bring it on. I'm out innovating myself. It doesn't really matter. So this matters to you individually, in your department, and your overall organization, right? How you want to be like different and challenge the status quo. So Salim Ismail, a futurist who's part of the X Prize, talks about the massive transformative purpose. If you think about TED Talks, their massive transformative purpose is ideas worth spreading. 3 words: ideas worth spreading. People can understand that immediately, rally behind it, and boom, you get the momentum. In your organization, in your group, what's your true north? How are you going to get people rallying behind that rallying cry, if you will? For us, in the testing area, our goal is we want to test everything every day. So what is your massive transformative purpose? Many speakers here talked about how you have to keep it simple, right? With data science and all the data that's flowing around, it can get complicated really, really fast. So how do you look at the business value? How do you structure the problem in a way that is not overwhelming? We use the analogy of drilling for oil a lot. And if you're searching for oil in the size of Texas, you can't drill everywhere. So you got to focus. You got to pick your battles. And it starts with keeping it simple. And you can also take a page out of the design thinking book, where you're iterating fast and furiously, right? Small data science experiments, small insights, taking the business on that journey, right, with you, and then iterating through the life cycle from discovering to defining to developing to delivering. And what's interesting, another McKinsey study, or actually, sorry, a World Economic Forum study, talks about how mechanization today is at around 29% of the world's activities. And by 2022, it's going to be at 40%. So the diffusion is minimal, right? Where there's emerging technology that hasn't really emerged. There's a lot more ground to cover, and it's not going to happen overnight. And that's part of the opportunity that's ahead of us. And sometimes we get stuck on, hey, let's build the platform. If you think about the light bulb, or you think about the airplane, they were the things that were invented first, before the electricity grid, the platform, came online, or before airports came online. And that's where I think as data scientists, we're in a unique position, right? By doing these small experiments, we can invent the light bulb, and then we can think about the platform. And for us, even in terms of the automation system that we've built, it's almost an afterthought. We built it for a very specific use case, and now you take that step back and you're like, oh my God, I can automate anything to a certain extent. People is a huge angle to all of this, where customer experience, delighting your customer is critical. We talk about product stickiness, the user experience that we're trying to build on top of the automation system. We want people to log in 10 times a day. Just like Facebook makes you log in 10 times a day, right? Also, catalyzing the crowd, right? Many of you are familiar with Kaggle and how amateurs on Kaggle have beaten experts with decades of experience from insurance companies, decades of experience in the medical space, and they've done it in a matter of days. So you can leverage the power of the crowd within your organizations, get a small bunch of motivated individuals together, and you can do this. And that's how we've done it. We've even run some experiments in emails and asking for just submissions, and we've gotten hundreds of responses in like 24 hours. And the last one is diversity of the people, of thought, and how that can connect dots in ways that as individuals with our kind of unique way of thinking, you're just not going to be able to do. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on the project side to things. There's a very famous Standish report that talks about how projects get canceled, how projects are late, how projects fail, how projects are over budget, and the cost is huge. And all of this is based on manufacturing thinking, where waterfall methodology was inspired off of the assembly line, where you would measure twice, cut once, requirements were stable. And you have to kind of shift from that thinking because CPU time is not that costly anymore. And how the task of developing software, implementing innovation, is a creative task. And it can't be just ordained. And this is, like the old thinking, right? When I started my career 20 years ago, you'd have people on their perch just saying, hey, go implement this ERP system, this CRM system. And the team would go for 2 years, 3 years, and they'd go build it, come back, it's done. That's not how it works anymore. Bite sizes, right? Iterative. Roll it out, MVP the hell out of it. Shipping is a feature too. And it's sometimes inherently complex, and there's a lot of variability to it. And that continuous learning is a critical aspect of the work we do. And taking people on the journey of Agile, right? For us, it might be kind of motherhood and apple pie. We drink the Agile Kool-Aid. What about the business folks? Can we take them on this journey with us? Explain some of the complex in terms that they understand. How we have to open ourselves to the lessons learned. That not all babies are pretty. We might have had the best idea, and we went on this 2-week sprint. It didn't work. Kill it, move on. Iterate off of the lessons learned. There's a seminal paper in Harvard, actually a couple of decades ago, called the New Product Development Game. And it talks about how a creative task when you're building a product, and in many ways we're in the product development game, you can do it sequentially, one thing after another, just like manufacturing. You can also do it in an overlapping way, where it's more or less phased, structured, etc. But the work we do, it's, like I said earlier, inherently complex, inherently variable. And it has to be value-driven. Focus on the business value. Sometimes that you lose that. You're in the trenches, you're working on some crazy data science problem. You have to think about, hey, what's the business value that I'm trying to drive here? And things don't happen in an exact way. So be ready for that variability. So to kind of sum it up, parallelism. Find a way to basically structure your innovation projects in a way that the nervous system doesn't attack it. Find your true north with a massive transformative purpose and basically get people to rally behind you. Technology, right? Build individual solutions. Think about that longer-term platform view. People, from customer experience to leveraging the crowd to diversity, and then be agile. If you do these 5 things and you get this right, you're well on your way. And here's one more final thought. Experts were asked what their forecast was for solar production. And they answered in a very linear way. They were asked again. And they answered again linearly. They were asked again. They again answered linearly. This happened over and over and over again. as the actuals were more exponential in nature. Humans can't think about growth in terms of like exponential growth. It's always linear. Year over year, this happened. And we are on pace to have more solar power energy in the next few years than the world needs. So go back to that earlier statement, the problem space is going to shift. Energy is no longer going to be a constraint. We have too much energy. So when you're on this innovation journey, you're going to face this over and over again. And that's where speed matters, right? Because speed can kill also. So here is the trading floor in UBS in 2008, and 8 years later. Goldman had 500 people making the market in equities. They have 5 people now. Just this week, actually, Goldman announced that they're hiring on the trading side, which is a fresh breath of air. But guess what they're hiring? They're hiring engineers and coders, not actual traders. Anyways, thank you so much. Appreciate the time and my personal email address if you guys want to get in touch.